Could you design a brilliant tabletop war game based on a battle where one side never really stood a chance? Sounds impossible, yet some of the best historical games I've ever played have been exactly that. The secret isn't balancing the armies, it's balancing the experience. This week's topic comes from a question left by a long-time subscriber, Scornado, who asks whether I could do some follow-up chats about the different phases of scenario design and particularly how I make a very asymmetrical battle enjoyable for both sides. Now, it's a great question because truly balanced battles are actually quite rare in history. Commanders did everything they could to gain an advantage before the fight even started. Yet many scenarios smooth away those differences in the name of fairness. And I think that's a missed opportunity. The goal isn't to make the armies equal, it's to make the game equally rewarding for both players. And the first mistake many scenario designers make is assuming both players should be trying to achieve exactly the same objective. If one army has overwhelming numbers and firepower, giving both sides the simple goal of destroying the enemies rarely going to produce an enjoyable game. The problem isn't historical accuracy, it's the victory conditions that don't reflect what commanders were actually trying to achieve. More often than not, history was about delaying an advance, protecting a withdrawal, securing a bridge, or simply surviving long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Once you start designing scenarios around those kind of objectives, the possibilities become far more interesting. Take a rearguard action as an example. The defending player may know they'll eventually lose the ground they're holding, but that doesn't mean they've already lost the game. Their objective might be to delay the enemy for 8 turns, for example, get half their force safely off the table, or preserve enough troops to fight another day in a linked campaign. Suddenly every decision matters, every sacrifice has a purpose, and every extra turn feels like an achievement instead of simply delaying defeat. The same principle applies to the stronger side. Bigger armies aren't automatically easier to command. They're harder to coordinate, slower to manoeuvre, and often under pressure to achieve their objectives quickly while keeping casualties to a minimum. An army that must capture several objectives before nightfall while avoiding unnecessary losses faces a very different challenge from simply marching across the table. They're not just trying to win, they're trying to win efficiently. Now, in my experience, terrain is probably the greatest balancing tool available to any scenario designer, and conveniently is also one of the most historically accurate. Throughout history, smaller forces survived by fighting on ground that reduced their opponent's advantages. Rivers, villages, forests, hills, narrow roads all force the larger army to think carefully about how it attacks. Used well, terrain becomes more than scenery, becomes an active part of the battle, and gives the weaker side meaningful opportunities without resorting to artificial balancing. Hidden movement and uncertainty can take that even further. Smaller forces have often relied on surprise rather than strength, and that's something a scenario can represent brilliantly. Concealed deployment, dummy markers, or ambush rules force the stronger player to make decisions with incomplete information instead of simply advancing in a straight line. That uncertainty creates tension for both sides and often produces some of the most memorable moments in a game. Morale is another mechanic that deserves more attention in asymmetrical scenarios. Rather than simply determining when units leave the battlefield, morale can reflect the changing confidence of each army. A determined defender may become more resolute as they successfully delay the enemy, while an attacking force expecting an easy victory might become increasingly frustrated as casualties mount and time slips away. Those changing emotions add another layer of realism without artificially boosting either side. Resource management can create similar challenges. A smaller force might have limited ammunition and must choose carefully when to commit its firepower, while the larger force may have to balance speed while maintaining supply lines and protecting vulnerable assets. Instead of giving one side all the advantages, both commanders are faced with different but equally interesting problems. Now, storytelling always plays a huge role in successful historical scenarios. Great games aren't just tactical puzzles, they're stories unfolding across the tabletop. Unexpected reinforcements, deteriorating weather, or changing orders can all recreate the uncertainty real commanders experienced. Those moments often become the stories players remember long after the game has finished, regardless of who actually won. Now, one principle I always try to follow is that both players should feel clever if they play well. The weaker side should be rewarded for using deception, timing and terrain effectively, while the stronger side should succeed through planning, coordination and disciplined execution. If either player feels they have little influence over the outcome, the scenario probably needs another round of development. Now, replayability is equally important. Historical battles only happened once, but our scenarios may be played dozens of times. Variable objectives, different deployment options, and occasional random events can ensure each game develops differently while still remaining true to the history. Players should feel encouraged to experiment with different approaches rather than simply repeating the same battle over and over again. I also think scenario designers shouldn't be afraid to introduce bespoke mechanics when they're needed. If surprise defined the battle, include ambush rules. If poor communication shaped the fighting, represent command friction. Generic rule sets are fantastic because they allow us to fight almost any battle, but carefully chosen scenario-specific rules are often what transform a good game into a memorable one. And perhaps the most important stage of all is playtesting. No scenario survives its first encounter with a group of imaginative players. Players will always discover tactics, loopholes or unexpected problems that the designer never considered. It's not a failure, it's simply part of the design process. Every round of feedback helps refine the objectives, mechanics and balance until both players feel challenged and engaged. Ultimately, I don't think asymmetrical scenarios should aim for equal armies, they should aim for equal enjoyment. Historical warfare wasn't fair, and our tabletop games don't need to pretend otherwise. What matters is giving both players meaningful decisions, believable objectives, and the chance to feel they've accomplished something, even if the historical outcome remains unchanged. When scenario design gets the balance right, even a hopeless last stand or desperate delayed action can become one of the most rewarding games you'll ever play. So what do you think? Have you played any asymmetrical scenarios that really captured the feel of the historical battle? Or have you experienced games where one side simply wasn't enjoyable to play? If you've written scenarios yourself, what techniques have you found that work best? I'd love to hear your ideas and experiences, so let me know in the comments below. That's it for this week. Please join the chat in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell for your weekly fix. Until next week, stay safe, keep gaming and of course, keep rolling high.